hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did. And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But, you know, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
I've been photographing the same family for 45 years. I followed their lives across 4 generations. They've invited me into their homes, and I've travelled to more than 120 countries with them.
If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth.
It's lie upon lie upon lie.
These two are insane narcissists.
She's a narcissist.
That gives you some idea of the scale of the Netflix narcissist.
She is a malignant narcissist. She's also a sociopath.
I'm gagging on the narcissism.
Meghan Markle is a sociopath.
Narcissistic isn't a big enough word.
The world can now see Harry and Meghan for what I've known they are for some time. Narcissistic egotists.
She has been called a narcissist many times.
She is a narcissist of the highest order. Someone that everyone thinks is a sociopathic.
You've heard the polished fairy tale before. The glowing carriages, the soaring music, the glittering guest list, all wrapped in perfection for the cameras. But hold on, let me spill this tea, because behind those palace doors, that royal wedding the world thought was flawless, it was a total train wreck. And guess who finally let the truth slip? None other than Arthur Edwards, the man who's been snapping royals since Diana's days. At 85, he has nothing left to lose, and honey, he did not hold back. He straight up confessed that Harry and Meghan's wedding was the worst royal event I ever covered. Yes, the worst. And trust me, what he revealed flips everything we thought we knew upside down.
My life, you know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, this all showbiz.
I was coming away from a polo match, he was rushing off. As he turned round, I saw this huge bald spot in his head there. So the next day, picture's a splash picture, and the headline was, "Oops, Charles."
Forget the romance, forget the unity, forget every storybook cliche you've been sold. Arthur swore this wasn't a royal wedding, it was a circus. Picture this: tradition shoved aside, family ignored, and the press, the very people who helped build the spectacle, treated like dirt. Instead of joy, it was chaos. Instead of honor, it was misery. And once you hear how badly it all went down, you'll never be able to watch that glittering broadcast again without thinking, wow, what a fraud.
He was angry, and I felt we were punished for that. In fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day. She delivered it like an actress delivered it, and Oprah responded going, wow.
Oh, it looked flawless on TV, didn't it? But the reality, Arthur says, was a nightmare. He hated the day. Imagine Windsor Castle turned into a giant furnace. Guests trapped in layers of gowns and stiff suits, sweating buckets under that brutal sun. People weren't glowing, they were melting. Behind those polished camera angles, exhaustion and frustration took center stage.
I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
How has your relationship with King Charles changed over your career? Because it started so long ago.
Well, long ago, yeah, it wasn't too great in the early days. In fact, I remember when I photographed his bald spot, he pulled me up 3 days later and he said, are you the man that photographed my bald spot? I said, yes, sir. I said, has it been bothering you? He said, no. He said, but how many people saw it? I said, well, about 7 million people, sir. He said, that's the reason why everybody, wherever I go, people are photographing the back of my head.
And here comes the part that will make your jaw drop. People who had given their lives to the crown, senior royals, veterans, family members who had been loyal for decades, were shoved to the back. Can you believe it? Meanwhile, Hollywood royalty, people who barely even knew Harry and Meghan, were paraded right to the front. The Clooneys, Oprah, random A-listers, it was like a red carpet premiere. Arthur said it didn't feel like tradition. It felt like showbiz in disguise.
I think I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. You know, I mean, they were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding to cover.
Yeah. Harry was determined to keep the newspapers away from it as much as possible. Everything was done on long lenses. I mean, Akaito had an 800mm lens photographing.
And let's talk about the press. Oh, the press, the very backbone of broadcasting this fairy tale to the world. Instead of being treated as partners in history, they were punished. Arthur revealed that Harry made a deliberate effort to ignore the cameras, turning away at every key moment, making it nearly impossible to get a single usable shot. Can you imagine? Edwards admitted that for the first time in his long royal career, not one of his photos from a royal royal wedding ever made it to print. Not one.
Also, I felt that wasn't just me, it was the whole of the British press. You know, they were in many ways badly treated. I think it was, Harry was angry with us really because some of the things that have been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh.
Can you tell us about the time you photographed Diana coming out of a swimming pool in Alice Springs?
Oh my God, you know about that, dear. That was where we arrived there in '83, and there had been a flood there. The Top River was flooded, so they couldn't go to where they were staying. They had to stay at this motel. And we were a motel about half a mile down the road. I thought I'd go up and have a look. Went up there, and Diana is getting out the swimming pool, water dripping off her, looking absolutely gorgeous. And I'm taking loads of pictures. And then suddenly I look down and there's no film in the camera.
Oh, no.
He said it felt less like a celebration and more like payback. Photographers were scrambling like mice, desperate for a clear angle, while Harry played this cat-and-mouse game, blocking, dodging, refusing to cooperate. Instead of timeless smiles and iconic portraits, it was wall after wall. Arthur summed it up in one word: disaster.
Obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world their new baby. I have to say, though, you know, that first year of Meghan, working with her on the road, you know, we went all over the country. She was incredible. I mean, I thought she was a great asset to the family.
What is the magic of the royal family? Why are we so interested? Why do we want to see the images?
Do you know, I keep asking myself that, and you know, there's been stories going over here in Britain that people are not interested in the coronation, and I kind of deny that. I remember they said that about the Queen's Golden Jubilee and Diamond Jubilee, and yet the crowds turned out in their thousands, and I think they will for King Charles and Queen Camilla on the day. I think there's a massive...
And Meghan? Oh, honey, Edwards didn't hold back. He said the whole thing didn't feel like two families coming together. It felt like a brand launch, a Hollywood debut dressed in a tiara. The sermon? Pure theater. The reactions? Staged. Every single detail screamed publicity more than it did tradition. This wasn't about love. It was about headlines.
And then when the baby was born, when Archie was born, that was another, in my view, a disaster, because I knew we was not going to get a picture of it. Everybody was hoping we would get pictures. And it's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather. That's really so awful, because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins.
And let me give you the inside scoop. Some people weren't even invited through personal ties. One guest, for example, didn't know Harry or Meghan at all. She got her invite because George and Amal Clooney asked for her to be there. Can you imagine? The flags, the choirs, the celebrities, they all looked dazzling on TV. But inside Windsor, people were suffocating. Guests fanned themselves like crazy. Makeup slid down cheeks and tempers boiled under the heat. Arthur compared it to every other royal wedding he'd covered and said flat out, none of them were this miserable.
I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles would be seething. It would be so unfair. The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away, you know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster.
The very important part of our bedroom is the photographer. We've been following around 40 years.
Now let's get real. It wasn't just the weather. Oh no, Arthur said the real issue was the attitude. Past royal weddings have faced rain, wind, blazing sun, you name it, but they were handled with grace. This one? It wasn't about care or comfort. It was about TV optics. The smiles plastered across that global broadcast hid the exhaustion, frustration, and growing resentment behind the scenes. And if you want proof of how showbiz replaced tradition, just look at the seating. Veterans who gave their lives for the crown, pushed aside. Royal family members with decades of duty, sidelined. Meanwhile, Hollywood stars strutted into prime positions. Arthur even joked he needed a GPS to find his own seat. It was that bad. He said it didn't even feel like Windsor Castle anymore. It felt like a red carpet event disguised as a wedding. People whispered in disbelief that day. Some laughed under their breath. Others sat there simmering with quiet fury. And Arthur? He called the whole setup pathetic. Can you imagine? For an event of such grand scale, the food and portions were so tiny people left hungry. A royal wedding, supposed to be the ultimate showcase of abundance and tradition, reduced to magazine-level minimums. minimalism. And for Arthur, that tiny detail spoke volumes. It summed up the whole day: style over substance, image over meaning. A royal wedding is meant to unite a country, to make people feel proud, connected, full of joy. Instead, this one left people whispering, rolling their eyes, and sneaking out unimpressed. Arthur said it wasn't just disappointing, it was insulting. A global fairy tale on screen, but up close, empty. But here's the real dagger: Prince Harry himself. Arthur admitted the harshest blow was how Harry handled the day. Instead of doing what every royal before him had done, embracing tradition, acknowledging the press, allowing the nation to share in history, Harry turned it into a vendetta. He glared at the cameras, turned away, blocked shots, avoided eye contact. It was like he was at war with the very people meant to preserve his memories. For photographers, Arthur said, it felt like chasing shadows. And listen to this. Arthur, the man who captured iconic moments of Charles and Diana, William and Kate, admitted that for the first time in his entire career, not one respectable photo came from Harry and Meghan's wedding. Not one. He called it defiance, not duty. He said the ceremony, instead of being a unifying celebration, turned into a battlefield where Harry seemed determined to punish the press he despised for Meghan's coverage. Imagine that. The world's most celebrated wedding turned into a game of revenge. Arthur couldn't help but compare it to the past. He remembered how William and Kate, after their children were born, proudly stepped outside and shared those first glowing photos with the world. Charles and Diana had done the same decades earlier. It was part of royal duty, letting the people feel included in their story. But Harry and Meghan, they smashed that tradition to pieces. Nothing but cold shoulders and slammed doors. Instead of rising above the criticism, Harry used the wedding as his weapon. It was supposed to be joy, but Arthur said it turned into hostility. Every time Harry turned away from the cameras, every timeless shot he denied, it was like he was sending a message loud and clear. This is war with the press. For Edwards, who spent a lifetime documenting the monarchy, it wasn't just frustrating, it was heartbreaking. The duty was gone, the warmth was gone. All that remained was bitterness. And let's talk about the ceremony itself. Arthur called it pure spectacle. The sermon, delivered like a Hollywood monologue. The music, flashy, dramatic, more like a TV performance than a sacred royal tradition. Every single element screamed showbiz. It wasn't about honoring the crown, it was about standing out, grabbing headlines, proving Harry and Meghan were different. For so many inside Windsor, it didn't feel like a union of two families at all. It felt like a brand relaunch. And Arthur didn't shy away from the fallout either. He knew the palace was furious. He said the Queen, Prince Charles, even William must have been livid watching family loyalty brushed aside so easily. A wedding is supposed to strengthen ties, but this one deepened divides. Instead of bringing the royals closer, it made Harry and Meghan look more determined than ever to break away. And for the Queen and Prince Charles, grandparents desperate to see Archie and later Lilibet, it was devastating. Arthur said they were basically shut out, watching their grandchildren grow up as strangers. He called it heartbreaking. A family that had weathered generations of storms now fractured not by enemies, but by its own blood. And here's the tea nobody expected. Arthur said the cousins who should have been inseparable barely even knew each other. The next generation of royals, growing up worlds apart because of choices Harry and Meghan made. He even recalled the surreal moment when he showed a royal relative the very first photo of Archie on his own phone. That's how little access even family had. Privacy? Please, Arthur was blunt. It wasn't about privacy, it was about shutting doors. When Archie was born, the disappointment hit new depths. Normally, new royal babies are moments of national pride. Think of William and Kate standing outside the hospital glowing, introducing their children, Charles and Diana before them. But this time, a wall of silence, secrecy, distance, and control. Edward said the excitement was crushed. That magical, unifying moment? Denied. He called it another disaster, a pattern of exclusion that only widened the cracks in the monarchy. And then came the Oprah interview. If the wedding was the opening act, Oprah was the grand finale. And not in a good way. Edwards described it as an encore designed to burn bridges. Millions tuned in, jaws dropping, as Harry and Meghan lobbed accusations of racism and cruelty across the airwaves. And the royals? They had no chance to defend themselves. For Arthur, this wasn't reconciliation. It was a bombshell, a performance crafted for maximum headlines. The timing, he said, was no accident. Just as the world's sympathy for the couple seemed to fade, they reignited the media storm. Suddenly, they were back on the front pages, but Edward saw through it. He said it wasn't truth-telling, it was strategy, a calculated move to stay relevant, to keep their names trending, even if it meant tearing the family apart. And the result? More bitterness, more fractures, more mistrust. Arthur said families were torn to pieces, bonds were shattered, and dignity, royal dignity, unity, was tossed aside for ratings. Looking back, Edward summed it up with brutal honesty. The wedding, that sparkling spectacle seen by millions, wasn't the fairy tale we thought. It was the start of a downward spiral. Guests baked in the sun. Veterans and royals were shoved to the back. Celebrities strutted into the best seats. The press was punished. And Harry? He turned the day into a battle with the very institution meant to preserve his legacy. And Meghan? Edward said she treated it like her Hollywood debut. Every detail designed for maximum drama, not tradition. From the flashy sermon to the staged reactions, it was a brand launch in disguise. To the world, it looked like happily ever after. But to those inside Windsor, Arthur said, it felt like betrayal. Instead of unity, it brought division. Instead of joy, it planted bitterness. Instead of tradition, it sold spectacle. For Edwards, who spent decades documenting the monarchy, this wasn't just another wedding gone wrong. He said it was the day the monarchy was turned into a backdrop, a stage for controversy. The moment duty gave way to drama and love gave way to strategy. And that, he insisted, is the legacy Harry and Meghan left behind. Not a love story for the ages, but the opening act of a long-running spectacle. Scandal after scandal. Headlines over harmony, estrangement instead of unity. In his own words, it wasn't the joining of families, it was the day the monarchy was used as a backdrop for a global brand launch.